Welcome back to another episode of What Should I Get Pierced? My name is Scott Wilkinson. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. Now today what we're going to do is we're going to go through 6 people. That's right, I said it. 6 people. We're going to take a look at their faces and their ears. I'm going to tell you what I think would work well for them and ultimately what I think would work best. But first, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Thank you very much. Now let's get to the first person. Up first, we have Sinead. Now looking at Sinead, we can see that there is not automatically, but it was put there, a septum piercing. Septum piercing looks fantastic, and with septum piercing, that kind of gives us a couple options to branch off. Maybe high nostrils would look really nice. I could also see a Medusa. Medusas always work real well, kind of create that little triple bead look. And then there's also the lip piercings, whether you do a normal labret or we could do some snake bites. Now, as far as other options go, we could always do eyebrow piercings, one maybe on each side of her eyebrow, or a double set on one side. And my ultimate pick is going to be high nostril and vertical labret. Let's take a look at her ear. Now, looking at her ear, you can see right away that there is 5 earlobe piercings here. Looks like they're in a nice straight line. That is super cool because symmetrical ear piercings is important to me. As far as the top piercing, you're seeing a flat piercing, which just basically kind of means the center of the helix / anti-helix. Now, this whole area right up in here is the anti-helix, and it's always a super cool option to add one up above and one below. Now, another option would be a tragus piercing. Looks like the tragus protrudes plenty to pierce. And the doth looks like would be a fantastic option as well. Now, if you stayed away from the doth and the tragus, well, you could always do the conch area. There's room for 1 or 2 possible piercings. And even when they're healed, you can wear the ring all the way around. And if you wore the ring around in the center, you might not hit it, but it still might kind of fall down onto that top one. So rings have to be kind of snug if you're going to do something like this. And then also we have a forward helix. It looks like there's plenty of room to add 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 up there. It just depends on how deep that channel goes all the way inside. If you can see the backing, it's not worth doing in my opinion. And my ultimate pick here is going to be a forward helix, a conch, and a tragus. And up next we have Mary Jane. So let's take a look at her face. Now, looking at Mary Jane, I can see right away that I am drawn to the eyes. So we're going to want to do things kind of parallel to her eyes. So I could definitely see some nostril piercings. That would work well as a bridge piercing if you wanted to go the bridge. Now, the thing about bridge piercings is they can leave scars. So it's up to you if you want to go through this and possibly leave the scars for the future. Now, another cool option would be a labret piercing right down in the center because her upper lip is so prominent. It's going to be a nice straight vertical line in there. And then if you wanted to, you could always do the vertical lip too. You hear me suggest the vertical lip all the time, but some people have the right lip where it really shows it off, and I just love the vertical labret piercing. And the last of the options I'm going to suggest here is maybe an eyebrow piercing. Maybe not the outside of the eyebrow out here, but let's move it in just a little bit. It looks like that might be kind of fun to have some inner eyebrow piercings, real small barbells with real small beads in there. So my ultimate pick here is going to be a double nostril piercing and a labret. Let's take a look at her ear. Now, looking at her ear, you're not really seeing any piercings, but it does look like there's probably an earlobe piercing down there at the bottom. So we could possibly start stretching that. That's always a fun option to kind of get something a little bit larger in there. And then there's always the tragus piercing. You can see how this one sticks out. That would be a perfect tragus. Now there's also the conch piercing. This area is nice and skinny between here and here, which means once you heal it up, you can put a smaller ring in there, which gives you a lot of options for a lot of clickers and seam rings. Now, as far as the upper helix goes, this area right up in here, it looks like the skin's kind of folded over and it's kind of tight. So if you added a gem or something, it might be stuck inside there. So if you healed this up, maybe some rings. I could definitely see a couple rings once this is healed up. You know, start with some basic studs, but finish it up with some rings. Now, as far as my ultimate picks, I'm going to say a triple helix and also the tragus. Next up, we have Michaela. Looking at Michaela's face, Immediately you can see a septum piercing, which is nice and straight and properly placed, and some glasses. Now the glasses will kind of obscure some of the areas that we can possibly pierce, like eyebrows might not be the best idea because it looks like they're right up there. And nostril piercings. I would love to do nostril piercings on her, but if the glasses rest right on there, that might not work. Because the reason I see nostrils is maybe changing up the septum to a solid ring and maybe changing up those studs on each side of her nostrils, 2 hoops, so you have 3 hoops all the way around. Now another fun option here I could totally see would be a jestrum. Now when we're looking at the jestrum here, you can see how her lip protrudes out, so you could put a nice small curved barbell on there and it'd be super, super cute. Now maybe an Ashley piercing as well. You can see how her lip is a little flatter on the front, which means you can have a nice forward facing gem or even a bigger gem and get away so it sits still nice and flush against the lip. And last suggestion I'm gonna say is going to be possibly some dahlias. I could totally see some dahlias on the side of her lips. And now my ultimate picks for Michaela would be a jestrum and some dahlias. Let's take a look at her ear. Now Michaela's ear definitely has a lot of fun options here as well. You can see there are a lot of curves like this tragus, which sticks out nice and far, which means there's a possibility of doing a vertical tragus, you know, kind of going vertical up and down like that. Now if the tragus isn't thick enough, it won't work, but that's a cool option not everyone gets. And then you can also see that there's plenty of room for a rook piercing up here, having a little curved barbell like so. Again, another fun conch piercing. You can large cluster or heal it up and wear the ring all the way around. As far as the earlobes, looks like there's a single earlobe, maybe a second one if you wanted to add a third one, but anything past that's going to go into the cartilage, so I like things in triples, so add that third earlobe piercing on there. And as far as the helix goes, you could add helix piercings all the way up, add gem clusters. There's a ton of options here. And the last option I'm going to say would be an industrial. It looks like there's plenty of ridge here to add the bead here, maybe a bead right up in here, an industrial bar going right across. Now, my ultimate picks would be an industrial and a vertical tragus. So up next we have Vincenzo. And Vincenzo is an architect, and he did mention that there is a possibility that it might not be as acceptable to have as many visible piercings. So right away I'm going to suggest the septum piercing. The septum piercing is an easy piercing to heal. You can flip it up inside and it can be invisible whenever you want. And even if you wanted to, you could also be stretching this to a larger size and stretch with plugs so it completely keeps it invisible up to any size you want. Now, a couple other options would be maybe a tongue piercing or a tongue web, which is on the underside of the tongue, on the inside of the mouth. Both of these are very invisible, but they might cause a little bit of a lisp during the healing process. So it's all about the timing here. If he was able to have piercings, I totally would say a bridge piercing too. How awesome would a bridge piercing look on him? But as far as my ultimate picks, I am definitely going to have to say the septum and a tongue web. Let's take a look at his ear. Now, Vincenzo's ear is very pierceable, but again, we need to keep things a little bit hideable. Now, one thing he did mention is that he was interested in an earlobe piercing. Now, we could do an earlobe piercing maybe at a slightly larger size, even with a clear glass plug. So if you want to do something a little bit bigger, maybe even starting him out at an 8 gauge. And then in the future, there's always different silicone plugs that keep it completely invisible when it needs to be really professional, but then you have options of super cool, fun plugs in the future. If he was looking at doing other piercings, maybe a tragus piercing, because you see how his sideburns and his hair kind of cover it, so you would be able to get away with maybe a little stud on the inside and nothing too flashy so it sticks through, but you could still have that piercing. Another option would be a helix piercing. You can see how it creates a little bit of a shadow, so it is a little bit more hideable, and I would say it might be more visible in the back, but as you can see, there's plenty of hair to hide that back there. So, my ultimate picks here is going to be the earlobe, and let's go a little bit bigger at maybe an 8 gauge. Let's also do a helix at the same time. Up next, we have Maddie. And when we're looking at Maddie's face, we can see right away there is the septum and the nostril piercing. And that's the only thing I really see. Now, I also want to mention that Maddie said that eventually she wants to get here with her mother and hopefully get pierced by me. I hope you do. Now, if we were to do this, maybe we could do the other side of your nostril. You know, kind of complete the little trifecta right there. I could also see a labret piercing. And if you did like the trifecta off to the side like that, you could also get away with a double labret. I think that might be kind of cute as well. As far as upper lip piercings go, you could also get away with the Medusa up top. And eyebrow piercings, it looks like the skin's kind of tight, so I might stay away from that. And because of the bridge, because of the glasses, we can't actually do a bridge. But my ultimate picks are going to be the nostril piercing and a labret. Now, let's take a look at Maddie's ear. Now, I wish I could get a little bit more of a close-up on that earring, because that earring looks pretty cool. But that's the only piercing I see, so let's decorate it some more. Tragus piercing. Tragus is plenty large enough to pierce, as well as a conch piercing. Now the conch piercing right there doesn't look like it's going to support a large cluster, but it's close enough to the edge here where you don't have to wear a super huge ring, and it gives you a lot of fun options for those rings. Now, as far as the forward helix, it looks like the rook connects a little too close, but if we went one below it and maybe two above, we could. No, it looks like this area is too tight up here. I'm going to say just the double forward helix would be best. As far as this upper part of the ear, this kind of folds over quite a bit, which says orbital to me. I could totally see an orbital kind of going through there, you know, like entering here, maybe entering there. Half the ring on top, half the ring on bottom. Fun options. Now, my ultimate pick is going to be an orbital and a tragus. And last but not least for today is going to be Irina. Now, when we look at Irina, we're seeing the septum piercing and the nostril. Seems to be kind of the trend of this video, but still super, super awesome. As far as additions go, I could totally see that other ring once it heals up, as well as some high nostrils. You could totally get away with all of those piercings. I wear it. And then another option would be angel bites. You see how angel bites would look really nice on her lips. And we could also do a Medusa if you want to do a larger gem or a larger cluster up there. I could also see a vertical labret. There's plenty of shadow on the bottom. Vertical labret would look nice. And as far as the eyebrow, it looks like skin might be a little tight. If we were to do it, we would have to go on the inside, or I would say maybe a horizontal eyebrow if we were to go that route. Now, my ultimate picks, of course, I'm going to have to say the other nostril and a vertical labret. Now, when we're looking at Irina's ear, there are 2 earlobe piercings already, and there is a little mole on the side, and we need to avoid piercing the mole. Those can be dangerous. But you can see the 2 earlobe piercings here. We could add that 3rd earlobe piercing. Again, I like things in 3s. And then there's always the tragus piercing. Nice protruding tragus, just saying, pierce me. So definitely do a tragus piercing. Doth looks like there's plenty of deep channel in there, so that would sit nice and tight in there. As far as the forward helix goes, you can see how it looks like it's a real tight pocket. If that's too tight, it wouldn't work. But if it is enough room, that would be a fun forward helix. Now, looking at the helix all the way down here, plenty of room for large gems. So if you really want to bling up the ear and do piercings all the way up, that is another option. Now, as far as the snug, it looks like that might be kind of thick, but at the same time, it would look super cool if you wanted to wait out the healing process, which would take about a year. Now, my ultimate picks are going to be a doth piercing and a triple helix. So that's what we have for today. If you enjoy my content, make sure to give me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you thought about the video, and stay tuned next week. We'll go through 6 more faces and a whole bunch more piercings. Again, keep putting holes in your body. We'll see you on the next video.